My name is Bill Tibbetts. I am with Crossroads Urban Center, and we have sent questions about housing and homelessness to all of the candidates for mayor and city council in Salt Lake City. And we are today meeting with Rocky Anderson, who is going to share his answers. So I'll read each question and then we'll let Rocky answer.
Outstanding.
Thanks so much for taking the time to talk to me.
Thank you.
Okay. Do you support the production of sufficient permanent supportive housing to meet the need for people with physical and mental disabilities in Salt Lake City?
Yes, absolutely. And we were on the way to doing that several years ago when I was mayor before. And by we, I'm not taking the credit for that. It was everybody combined. It was Salt Lake City Housing Authority, the County Housing Authority, the legislature, the LDS Church, Jack Gallivan, the Eccles, so many people and entities coming together that we were seen nationwide as an example of what other cities and states could follow to help eliminate chronic homelessness. And the fundamental reason was we were providing so much supportive permanent housing. Now, that growth in housing seems to have come almost to a grinding halt. There have been some exceptions to that over the years, but we really need to do this in the most cost-effective manner. I would say never do permanent housing like the Magnolia, for instance, because it's so much more expensive than taking facilities like the two hotels that Switchpoint has on North Temple. They cost less than half as much as the new construction at Magnolia, and yet both of those facilities offer tremendous permanent housing with supportive services. So that's absolutely possible. We know that it can be done. This sense of, oh, isn't this awful? It's happening all over the country. It's absolutely not true. There are cities that are solving these problems, that are making great strides in providing adequate housing. We can, and if I'm mayor, we will provide adequate housing for all who are vulnerable in our community. And that certainly includes those who have medical and mental health problems, and they are absolutely entitled to everything we can do to get them in permanent supportive housing. But we also have other vulnerable communities. We have victims of domestic violence. We have people who have been chronically homeless, who have been traumatized by years on the street. There are young people. There are transsexuals who have been basically ejected from their families, and they have a very difficult time also in shelters. So there are a lot of transsexuals that need housing, but so many people that are amongst the most vulnerable in our community, and we ought to be finding out through good professional outreach, not the downtown ambassadors, but good professional outreach, every single person that's on our streets, every single person that is utilizing shelter. And it's only through good outreach and case management that we're going to be able to far more rapidly transition people into housing and the services that they need. So yes, we need to recommit, as we did many years ago, all of us combined, the corporate community, the philanthropic community, the churches, governmental entities, all of us coming together, we can once again be an example that people look to around the country for what we do to eliminate chronic homelessness and provide supportive permanent housing for those who are most vulnerable.
Okay, our second question is also about supportive housing. Would you commit to actively support efforts to build 200 units of child-centered permanent supportive housing in Salt Lake County during the next 5 years to fully meet the current need?
I don't know that 200 units would fit the current need, but whatever that need is, and again, we need good outreach work being done so that we know exactly the circumstances of people in our community who are on the edge of homelessness or who are amongst our homeless population, whether they're sheltered or unsheltered. But we need to make extraordinary efforts immediately to provide adequate housing, and apparently the estimate is 200 units now, but make those available because children going through homelessness, they carry the trauma of homelessness with them their entire lives, and we need to show them and their families that they've got community support. And don't just put them anywhere, put them in places that are conducive for children. We all ought to ask, if we had children, where would we want to live? It's not in a place where there are a lot of people that are in need of mental health services or where there are drug addicts or dealers. We need to provide good, safe, wholesome housing where there are other children, where other families choose to have their children, with outdoor opportunities and all the rest, all the kinds of things that make for a good, wholesome childhood. So yes, we absolutely need to do a careful inventory of what the needs are and meet those needs without any more delay.
Okay. Our third question is, do you support the creation of a tenant relocation assistance program in Salt Lake City?
Yes, it's fundamental, and it shouldn't have taken months and months or however long it's been to come up with all these reports and studies and have all the meetings. It's almost intuitive that if anybody is being displaced because of development or for any other reasons, such as increased rents, we need to help anybody that's in housing that's going to be displaced. Make sure that they are not displaced, because once people are part of the homeless community, it's so much more difficult to get them into permanent housing, and they're more likely to come back to homelessness. So those who are in housing deserve, and we owe it to them as a community if we allow new development that displaces them, or if rentals increase in this community to the point that they're going to be displaced. We have got to provide them direct help and make sure it's absolutely coordinated. Not just say we're going to give it the best shot we can. The only measure of success will be if someone is helping them, guiding them, and knows where decent housing resources can be found. And that includes the affordability component. They've got to be able to afford it into the future. But no one should be left worse off in terms of their housing because the city is allowing development. And unfortunately, most of the development that's been going on in Salt Lake City is absolutely unaffordable, even for middle-class people. There has not been the work that needs to be done to provide especially deeply affordable housing, but even affordable at the 30 and 40 and 50% AMI levels. But we can get there if we go about it the right way and stop spending millions of dollars to help line the pockets of developers who, as developers are, and this is what they do, they're after the highest profit margin they can get. we don't have to have a profit margin getting in the way of good, decent housing for everybody at all income levels. If we move forward, and I know we're going to be covering this later, but if we move forward with what in other nations is called social housing, here we'll call it non-market housing, but where the city pulls together the assets to build great housing with beautiful outdoor open space amenities, as is done in so much of the rest of the world.
Okay. The next question is also is related, because when people are displaced, it's because their housing was destroyed by new development. I mean, so do you support the creation of a community benefit policy to prevent the loss of existing affordable housing units in the city?
Yes, there absolutely should be a community benefit policy that is enforced. And I would go one step further and say, if somebody is going to come in and do a housing development, and that's going to displace someone, or it's going to get rid of anything near affordable housing, then they ought to be required to provide even more affordable housing than what's being lost. If we're going to be making any progress in the city in terms of affordable housing, and we've only moved backwards dramatically in the past 4 years, but if we're going to make progress, we've got to take every opportunity we can, and we're just going to have to tell developers, you cannot come into our community and destroy affordable housing, displacing people, without providing adequate replacement. And I would say what's adequate is providing more than what's being destroyed, according to some formula that we could develop. But we've always got to be making progress. We've always got to be taking advantage of any opportunities to provide greater affordability in terms of housing in Salt Lake City.
Okay, well, the last question we sent all the candidates is this one. Do you support efforts to increase funding to address homelessness and housing instability?
Absolutely. We should, I hear all these claims that the city's been putting in all these millions of dollars for affordable housing. Well, you can throw out the term affordable housing all you want, but unless you define what kind of housing is it, I understand some of these places, they're saying, oh yeah, we'll do so many units of affordable housing, and they're the studio units, whereas the rest of the housing is 1 bedroom and 2 bedroom. Or it's affordable only at the 60 or 70 or 80% of AMI level. So one person's affordable housing is another person's unaffordable housing. So I am absolutely committed to following the evidence. Look at what's being done around the rest of the world. Look at Vienna, for instance, where I believe it's 60% of the people in Vienna live in social housing. And that's simply the city or the state building the housing, and we've got good borrowing capacity. We ought to bond for it if that's required. Up in Seattle, voters voted in a recent initiative to make the government bond for social housing. Well, if I'm elected, we don't need a voters initiative, and voters initiatives are oftentimes overruled by the legislature anyway. All it takes is to elect me, and we will focus on non-market housing. And when we say non-market, it ought to also be mixed income, where you've got all sorts of people and mixes of incomes together in a beautiful place that upper middle class people will want to rent, as well as what we can provide for those at 30% or even lower of average mean income. So I can foresee, sometimes you just have to get an image in your mind of what could be. We could build, say, 25 or 30-story housing in, say, west of the Rio Grande. It would be right next to the intermodal hub. It would be in a beautiful spot, wide open. We could have open spaces. We could have parks. And we could have people who are spending a small percentage, relatively small percentage of their income on their housing. Right now in Salt Lake City, I believe the figure is more than half of people here who are renting are spending upwards of half or more of their income on rent. That is not sustainable. It should never exceed 30%. And in Austria, it's far less than that, with beautiful housing, people with mixed incomes there, families, single people, children with beautiful surroundings. That's what we can do. And it would also, as we do this, we would do what we did with the main library, for instance. We wouldn't just slap something together like so much of the housing we're seeing in Salt Lake City now. We would insist on architectural excellence, like we did with the main library, where we can all, as a community, be proud of these additions to our built environment. Salt Lake City should be known for the beauty of its buildings that house people just as much as for our government buildings, or like our main library, city and county building. Let's make our housing a thing of beauty that will attract people and that those who live there can be very proud of, as well as the rest of us in the community.
Okay, that's all our questions. Is there can people do to learn more about your campaign?
First of all, we welcome anybody to come as a volunteer. We're a very people-oriented, people-activated campaign. We go out door to door almost every night. I go with at least one other volunteer. We have volunteers go out and get up our lawn signs if we don't do it the nights that we go out door to door. There are a lot of people who are requesting lawn signs. So if you want to show your grassroots support, call us or get on our website, which is Rocky for Mayor, the number 4, Rocky4Mayor.com, and let us know if you'd like to volunteer, if you'd like a lawn sign, send in a contribution. And I'll just say it real directly. These campaigns take a lot of money. It's hard to get out our message just through our own social media accounts and people who follow them. We need to buy access to digital media and also streaming television. And we've got some people, we're doing this very cost efficiently. I've only got one paid staff person on our campaign. We've got people who are providing video at very low cost. And we've got some dynamite spots that we want to get out. We want to raise awareness among people in the city, as well as win this race. And campaign is a perfect time to do that. So please contribute what you can. You can do it online or send us a check and come volunteer. Volunteers are worth their weight in gold. So thank you very much. And I hope to hear from anyone who's concerned about affordable housing, about changing dramatically our city's approach to homelessness. And we can have a clean, vibrant, compassionate city once again. Thank you.
Thank you for taking the time to meet with me. With Crossroads Urban Center, we always are excited to have candidates share their opinions about what can be done to address homelessness and housing instability. And it's so we're really grateful that you took the time to talk to us, and we'll be reaching out to other campaigns and hopefully sharing what other candidates say also, so that people can have and voters can be informed.
Well, I really appreciate it, and it's organizations like yours that are really necessary to hold people's feet to the fire if they're not getting the job done. And right now, it's as crucial as any time I think that Crossroads Urban Center has been in existence, because this has become an absolutely unaffordable city. There are not only hundreds of people on the streets and in our shelters without homes, but this last winter we saw totally inadequate shelter, and yet hundreds of people left out on the streets with nowhere to go, people dying from the freezing cold, people losing fingers and toes as a result of the inadequate shelter. And I see that directly as a result of indifference and lack of leadership by our mayor. So thank you very much, Bill.
Thank you.